When COVID was first really kind of announced and there was this, the initial like lockdowns, one of our biggest customers at the time was Trader Joe's, and they went from basically tripling orders that they would normally give us, and there was millions and millions of dollars in inventory that we had to produce. And then shortly after, they made the decision to limit foot traffic inside their stores. Our snack business was down overnight, over 90%. We were actually even worse because we were positioned at the front end in a lot of their stores, but they put up plexiglass at the registers. So it was almost like a CHOMPS museum where they would put like, you could see the CHOMPS, you couldn't even get them if you wanted them. So yeah, sales just disappeared.
Welcome to Eating Glass. It's a podcast where in each episode, we ask startup founders the questions no one else will. Our goal? To reveal what it's actually like to start, scale, and exit a company. I'm Joe LeMay, and I bootstrapped my reusable notebook company, Rocketbook, to a $50 million exit.
And I am Nitze, founder and CEO at IQ Bar, a nutrition company I took from 0 to 40 plus million in annual revenue. For better or worse, we are your hosts. Eating Glass is sponsored by IQ Bar, which is my company, so be nice to it. What do we do here? We make IQ Bar plant protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe instant mushroom coffees, all of which are special because they are the only thing in their category that centers on nutrients good for your body, protein, electrolytes, things like that, as well as things that are good for your brain, so magnesium or lion's mane, to name a few. They are all delicious. Most functional foods and drinks taste like crap. Ours taste good, and taste matters. That is despite them being super low in sugar and super clean label. There's no weird stuff on our labels. And by the way, they're affordable. Functional stuff is usually price gougy, and we are not. I will not be offering a discount code. I will instead ask you a favor. Go to Amazon.com, search for IQ Bar, IQ Mix, IQ Joe, or some combination of the three. Find a non-sponsored listing, click on it, buy it, wait for it to arrive, and leave a review. And that is the only favor I will ever ask you. Thank you very much. Eating Glass is also sponsored by Ramp. Ramp is a corporate card and spend management software that we at IQ Bar have used for 5 years now, I think. And I actually reached out to them about sponsoring, not the other way around. I love them for 3 reasons. Number one, simplicity. Everyone on our team gets a physical and a digital card. Replacing cards, pausing cards, putting limits on cards, insanely easy. Setup takes 10 minutes. Number two, cash back. 1.5% cash back. You don't have to deal with points. If you're messing around with points, you are wasting your time. Just get cash back. Number three, they are better at categorizing spend. So we not only save money on the cashback side, we save time on closing our books because they're just better at classifying. They give us an incredible offer for you guys, $250 free when you sign up for Ramp today. Go to ramp.com/glass. That's ramp.com/glass. Cards are issued by Sutton Bank and Celtic Bank, members FDIC. Terms and conditions apply. Final sponsor is Gorgias, Gorgias. This is the help desk/customer service app we use at IQ Bar. We've used it for years. Similar situation, I reached out to them about sponsoring, and we actually started on Zendesk and moved to Gorgias. Our customer service had forced us to, basically, and I was like, why did you force us to do that? Why is Gorgias so much better? And he said, number one, apps and integrations are just better. We have a customer base on Shopify, Amazon. We want to be able to take phone calls. Like, all of that filters into one dashboard, and it makes his life easier. His user experience is easier. There's less clicking, less typing. Because of all the automations inherent to the Gorgias platform, he just has to do less, click less, have less tabs open. And the final thing is, it's really good for consumer brands. So returns, refunds, things that are centric to a business like mine are made really, really easy via the Gorgias platform. Go to gorgias.com. Again, that's Gorgias. Request a free trial. Mention us, Eating Glass. You will get preferential treatment, and you'll be up and running in 15 days. Pete Maldonado, thanks for joining us on Eating Glass. Why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what CHOMPS is?
Cool. So I'm Pete Maldonado. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO here at CHOMPS. We started the business about 12 years ago now. And when I say we, that's myself and then my co-founder, Rashid Ali. CHOMPS is a better-for-you meat snack brand. We focus on sticks only. We don't dabble in jerky, bars, anything else we've seen, made with meat. The idea for CHOMPS really came to me when I was a personal trainer in college. And back then it was really, how do I make my lives easier for all of my clients? I would spend a lot of time creating meal plans and, grocery shopping lists for my clients, and they just never stuck to them. Granted, this was about 20 years ago, so I think the options back then were limited. But anyway, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, all of my early, business and product ideas were always about nutrition, fitness, and, how could I bring those to market? So, CHOMPS is always one of those ideas I had in the back of my mind. When I grew up, I loved Slim Jims. I ate more than I'd ever like to admit today. But that's just the name of the game. From a format standpoint, I loved eating those versus jerky because I'd eat them and they tasted great to me. They were a little greasy and stuff, but I didn't really think much about it. But I didn't get a crazy headache. When I would eat a bag of jerky, it was so tough, I would get a really bad headache from it. My jaw would be killing me. And I'm like, man, why does anybody eat this stuff? The sticks are so much better. But then, obviously becoming a personal trainer, the obvious thought process is like, why is no one making it better for you, Slim Jim? So that was the concept there.
I'm going to start with a shock and awe question for you. I don't know how shocking it is, but maybe a provocative question, which is, at one point you were broke, like at one point you were down in the dumps, right? And I don't even know how long that period was, but you've gone through some dark times personally, professionally, etc. And you are now on the literal other end of that spectrum. Like, just financially speaking, you're rich, you have a great family, you have a great life, you grind your ass off, but like, you've made it, quote unquote. What is different about you as a person based on that evolution? Like, making a bunch of money, like, did that change who you are? Were you surprised that it didn't change who you are? Just talk us through that evolution.
Really good question. It's funny, I've never been asked that before. You warned me about this. No, that's a good question. So listen, yeah, again, you're right. I went as low as you can go. I mean, I filed bankruptcy when I was 27 years old, I believe that is, and that's not so long ago. I mean, it was 2009, so I guess it was a long time now. But yeah, I mean, I've always been a hustler in terms of like kind of entrepreneurial. Always had my hands in multiple different things, arguably too many different things, which really kind of maybe led to some of that stuff, like spiraling out of control back then. I think I've learned a lot in terms of focus and, again, just like not getting distracted from what I need to be focusing on and maybe moving too quickly, making hasty decisions, those types of things. So I think going through all of that changed me in a big way because it kind of changed the way I think about how I approach anything in terms of business or really any goal that I'm trying to reach. And then now, obviously, like you said, things are very different. It's from a financial standpoint. I mean, it's funny. All the goals that I had in terms of like trying to make, money and become financially, successful and all that. I'm able to do those things now, which is great. But like my interests haven't really changed, if that makes sense to you. Like my goals grow. I didn't grow up in a wealthy family by any means. My parents had my sister when they were about 18 years old. They had 4 kids by the time they were 26. They were grandparents by the time I was 37. So like our family is, big reproducers. And, but that being said, it's, money was always tight. Trying to make ends meet was really, really difficult. But I always had it in the back of my mind where I always knew my parents were doing everything they possibly could to take care of us. And they made so many sacrifices for us. So in my point of view, like my goal in life with financial was really to take care of them financially. Like it was less about what can I get for myself and what can I do to take care of them. Then honestly, that's still what gets me fired up about being successful. Now I actually have 3 kids and a wife, and so I want to make sure they're also set. But again, what makes me really, really like excited? Like I can't give more gifts to my parents, and I'll never get sick of that.
Here's the first topic that I love your take on. Going all in. Right? Everyone has a different perspective on this, and some people say you have to just dive in. When you have an idea, you want to start a company, you need to be doing that 24/7. You can't have an existing job. yada, yada, yada. Like, you can't be 1 foot in. You took the opposite approach. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you started CHOMPS in 2012. You didn't go full-time until 2016. Rashid didn't go full-time until 2018. And you had hit 10 million plus in sales by the time you were both all in. Like, that is radically different from the conventional wisdom. How do you think about the way you did it differently? Like, your approach versus conventional wisdom on just this idea of going all in.
That decision that we made to go up to, to do this as a side hustle in the beginning was really driven by my experiences running my first company, which is called Frozen Fitness, which was actually a frozen prepared meals company. It was designed, the idea was really to go head to head with, Jenny Craig, Nutrisystem, all of those. And those were the only ones that really existed back then. Now they're a dime a dozen. You find them really everywhere. These like kind of delivery meal plan companies. But that was, I started that business. I did a lot of things wrong. One of the things I could think of that was like the nail in the coffin for me, was raising money from the wrong person. And the person had no experience in the food business, just from personality, conflict standpoint. Like, it was destined to fail from the beginning. I kind of made some stupid decisions there, but coming out of it, I realized I am never going to rely on outside capital to be successful. And anything that I start, I'm going to be able to fund it myself, or I'm going to make it sure it's like self-funded and profitable out of the gate. And we can reinvest those profits into growing the business. So that was like, and if that's not your goal, then sure, go all in, raise money if you have to, or whatever you've got to do. I didn't want to do that. I'm glad we didn't. And we waited for so long to actually bring on a partner. And we did it at a time too, where you're not desperate for cash. You're just looking for really, really solid partnership and someone that you can learn a lot from. The way we always say, I want to learn from someone else's scar tissue. And these guys have been there and done it. And when you get to significant scale, all of the opportunities are greater, but now all of the downfalls, all of your mistakes, everything's magnified. And we realized that we were growing so quickly that we needed to have someone really, really strong on our side. And it was less about the cash. It was more about partnership.
I think this bootstrapping topic is another one which dovetails with that first topic, which everyone disagrees on. Some people are all in the bootstrapping camp. Some people are all in the fundraising camp. I think about it the way you think about it, which is like, you got to do what's best for you and according to your ultimate goals. I would have bootstrapped if I could have. Literally, how did you do it? I mean, how did you not face cash flow crunches? How did you finance it? Was your gross margin did you just price really high out the gate, such that even though you didn't have economies of scale, you had a good enough gross margin where you could sort of bridge that gap? Like, how did you pull that off?
When we first started the company, I had saved up a good amount of cash. So I was doing commercial real estate. Is really kind of what I was focused on. In the last real estate downturn, when you saw it, if you ever watched like The Big Short, they started talking about CDO business and these tranches of loans that went, to these different investors. Like, that's kind of where I was focusing. So it was like large scale. I focused a lot on fractured condo projects. So down here in Florida in particular, there was a lot of these apartment complex developers were buying them, breaking them apart. Like, they would actually do a condo conversion out of it, and then they would sell them as condos. So I focused in that area. So I was able to, in the end, over the course of like 18 months, I was able to sell 805 condos in a series of deals. So I made a really good amount of money. For me back then, that was great. So I had that in the bank. Obviously, changes a lot of your decision making in terms of how you're going to build your business. But I wanted to make sure that I can pay for my own bills and my lifestyle and all that while I'm building the business. So that was really like kind of a requirement for me before I went all in on building a business. So just want to set that straight too. So it's not like I was just not being paid and not like living off of like in a shoebox. It's not at all how it was. I was in a pretty decent spot, but I worked my butt off to get there and to make that happen. I always saw real estate at the time as a means to an end. I knew I could make a lot of cash very quickly if I just hustled my butt off. And that's exactly what I did. Getting on to the rest of your question, in terms of bootstrapping, like it was more about just making sure that I have control of the decision making. I didn't want any investor, controlling any of our decision making. I didn't want to have a boss. I've never had a boss in my whole life. Like I've never had a real job. I can never picture myself having a boss and having someone to, tell me what to do on the daily. I couldn't bring myself to do that. When you bring in money that early, you're basically bringing out a boss. Like that someone's going to be there and they're going to be calling the shots. They're going to have some say. I never wanted that to happen. So yeah, that kind of was where that decision making came from. We put in a total of $6,500 between Rashid and I, so $3,250 a piece. That got us our first round of samples, a very small production run. Then we just went to town. It was really just starting very, very niche. It was like fitness and diet tribes. So we were going to CrossFit gyms. We were, just meeting people and just going door to door. We were in Chicago. I was still in Chicago at the time. So we were getting a lot of these kind of small, grocery stores or whatever to pick us up. And it was all very independent and just kind of like trying to get ourselves out there. But we realized quickly, that there was actually demand for this type of product. We took our small amount of samples that we had, we sold through those, turned that into an actual very small production run, sold through that, and just kept snowballing from there.
So you were just living hand to mouth, like you would sell out, take the revenue, do another production run.
We were so focused on D2C and e-commerce, which the big thing right now is like for me to give advice to someone to do things the way that we did it, like here's the playbook. Like that would never work. Like in this environment and the way so many things have changed. I mean, this was 12 years ago. Back then, paid ads were a lot cheaper. You get a lot more bang for your buck back then. Nowadays, and competition's different, right? Now I've got how many competitors, in this category. It's just, I don't know if we ever would have been able to replicate what we did on a budget the way we did.
If you were advising yourself of the past, or even if you were doing it again today, would you be more aggressive about going all in?
If I'm looking back, we probably could have gone in and gone all in a little bit sooner. But we also realized that we would have hit a number of different roadblocks. And one of them started, we're a co-man business, right? So we rely on a third-party co-packer. The co-packer that we had back then was extremely, extremely small. They've grown with us. They have a huge plant now. They're one of the biggest snack stick makers in the country. But back then they were not. And so when we went from a 10,000 pound order to a 120,000 pound order, so producing sticks out of that, and when I'm saying pounds, that's raw pounds of meat. They barely could finish that. I mean, it was like, it was a lot of pressure on the co-packer. So that being said, we probably could have raised some money. We could have done some things differently to go a little bit quicker, but we would have hit a number of roadblocks, and I don't even know if it actually would have accelerated anything just because of that.
Were you ever worried about a lack of urgency of like, we got to move fast, or someone's going to seize this opportunity instead of us?
I'd only be worried about us losing focus and getting distracted by things that just don't matter and things that aren't going to be truly impactful to the business and to our long-term strategy. And so we are like really, really good at ignoring the noise. Like, I don't know. I can't really explain it. I don't know if it's like an intuitive thing or what, but like we're aware. We're aware of what's going on around us. We're just kind of just like, oh, okay, well.
You did have this brand enemy in Slim Jim to a degree. And I love that concept of like an enemy that you can rally the troops around. On the Slim Jim side, how did you think about them? Did you think about them as an enemy? Did it inform your go-to-market strategy?
I don't know if enemy is the right word. It's like kind of like I call them like the behemoth. Like that was like what they were. Like they were there, but they were like the old dinosaur. And like we wanted to come in and kind of reinvigorate the category and bring something new and fresh. In fairness, I probably wouldn't have started CHOMPS if it wasn't for Slim Jim, because I wouldn't have had the idea about the format and all of that. So, I mean, I'm thankful that they paved the way, at least in some sense. And people, when they see CHOMPS, you have no idea. Even to this day, I think people are like, oh, better for you, Slim Jim. So when you try to start, I think any type of new product, if you like, what you want to be able to do is someone to look at it, and within a second, they should instantly understand, oh, that's what that is. If you don't have that, it's going to be really, really hard. That's a tough hurdle to get over. And it's going to cost you a lot of money a lot of times in educating consumers if you can't do that. So I think the fact that Slim Jim did exist, that's what probably is one of the main things that are a major thing that led to us being able to start Chomps for such little money.
Curious about focus. You do just meat sticks. You've got turkey and beef and things like that. But, clearly Chomps, it's a great name, by the way. I mean, it could gobble up other categories, right? Do you think it will someday? Are you going to stick with that?
Obviously, sticks is our core. And we think about we call it innovation through simplification. We've been kind of using that term for a long, long time. And we want to just keep things as simple as possible. Our biggest innovation over the last probably 3-4 years has been taking a single stick and then putting it into a pack of 8 and selling that in a multi-pack. And that's literally probably tripled the business alone, like that alone. It drives more consumption. It drives higher velocities. So same store sales have gone through the roof, and that's the innovation. And so other people might look at that in the space and like, well, that's not real innovation. You're not bringing anything new to market. It's like, well, okay, well, the numbers might tell you different. That was innovation. So I think it was. I think it is great, and it was simple. It was easy for us to accomplish it, and it's it was a game changer for us. So I think there's a lot of different ways that people need to start thinking about innovation. It's not just product. Like, it's not just like coming out with the next new shiny thing. People get so bogged down with this stuff, and it eats companies alive.
People think about innovation and differentiation as it relates to product, and usually product is the minority of that picture. It's channel strategy, it's operations, it's repackaging things. Because like, I have this thing I say all the time, there are infinity people. There are like infinity people. And so you can grow your business by just selling more. It's always better to grow your business by selling more of the same thing or repackaging the same thing to just more people. Obviously, in an e-com context, you want to increase the basket size and all that, right? So that does help to have different offerings, which you've done within the same category. But there are infinity people.
One thing there, though, it's easier to sell more of the same product to the same person if you can figure that out.
You've done that via new flavor profiles for the most part and new packaging formats, right? Where I contrast that with me, right? We've done that also through new flavor profiles, but then we also moved into hydration and coffee, and we've done it in a super circumscribed way. So there's like the common trope of an average product with great distribution beats a great product with average distribution. And I've also heard you say in an interview that you could get away with a lot because your product was so freaking good. Like you didn't have to have great branding for a while, and you got a lot of grace in other areas of your business because your product was so freaking good. How do you think about just like product versus distribution in that context?
To that point, I do truly feel that the product, in a sense, could sell itself, just because. And also, by the way, product market fit is critical. Timing is critical. Timing was perfect. When we started Chomps, it was perfect, right? It couldn't get much better. I mean, you think about what happened with the keto diet explosion. CrossFit was still on the uptrend. You got Whole30; they were crushing. They're all these are, and any diet you think of right now is all cutting sugar. I mean, most of them coming out are cutting sugar. So we check the boxes for those, and probably the next one's going to come up, right? So I think that's really, really important. The product has to taste great. That's one of the things that we spent a lot of time on, was making sure the product tastes really good before we came out with anything. We got very lucky. We landed on our original beef flavor like very fast, and that's the one. It hasn't changed since. And all of our future flavor profiles for the first maybe 7 years or something like that was all based on the original beef flavor profile, and we would just add things to it. So we just added chopped up jalapenos and created our jalapeno stick, and that was very simple. But yeah, I don't know. I think from a distribution standpoint, yes, I'm seeing it now that we're gaining more and more distribution. There's a kind of this flywheel effect, and more people trying the product is obviously going to start leading to more word of mouth. They're sharing it, they're seeing it. Household penetrations we start tracking that in a way that's and we realize that there's a huge impact on unaided brand awareness. People are seeing it. So yeah, I think it all goes together. But if you don't have the product piece, it's any type of distribution that you have, and that will be short lived in my point of view. Because if you don't have the repeat purchases, you're going to start losing distribution. And when you start seeing that negative, a downturn in ACV, it's like a kiss of death.
I'm curious as well, just to back up a little bit. Today, CHOMPS is just absolutely crushing it, and it looks amazing. But I know all three of us know here how hard it is to go from 0 to 1. Could you put the spotlight a little bit on those times when you had some existential risks? You thought, am I going to make it out of here alive or bankrupt again? What's that like? And explain that to, somebody might be watching this and is like, I want to build the next CHOMPS. It's going to be pretty easy, right? But let us know what we're in for.
So there were 2 existential crises that we faced, and I think one of them was very early on. One of them was probably more recent. So early on, we were making the product. We had a lot to learn. We've learned so much over the years making sticks, and it's funny to say, but there's actually a science behind it, which we've learned that science, and our team is amazing at making sticks nowadays. But it comes with there's a lot of pain and trial and error over the course of making the product. It was also actually our co-packer had no experience really making products like ours without any sugar added to it. So, and a lot of people don't know this, but there's sugar added to most meat snacks. And us coming out with a sugar-free meat stick was pretty innovative because it took a lot more to make a product like that. From a quality control standpoint, there was a lot of investment that had to go into it. So one of the things that happened, we found out that we use 85% lean protein. So 85-15 is what we order from our beef suppliers. When we get it, it's shipped in a container 40,000 pounds at a time. And so what we were finding was that our beef suppliers were sending us a container that was an average of 85-15. But what would happen was the front of the truck might be 95-5. And the back of the truck might be 75, 50, 25, whatever the numbers are. But overall, for the 40,000 pounds, it averages out to an 85-15. The problem is we're grabbing case boxes off the front of the truck. And then from wherever we are inside the truck, we're doing 300-pound batches. So now what was happening is you were getting this huge fluctuation in fat content for the when we were making each batch. So come to find out, if you go up, you're off the 85-15 by 2 points either way, the product is drastically different. So if it goes to it's too fat so it's about 83% lean, the product will actually fat out. It's called. So it's kind of gross to explain, but when it's we make the product, it's almost like it's in the casing, almost like a hose wrapped around a truck, or a rack is what we call it. And you put that in the oven. That's how it cooks. So when it cooks in there, it's hanging vertically. And then as soon as the heat hits it, the product inside will actually melt, the fat melts, and the meat will slide right out. And so that's called fatting out. And it's a disaster. So you end up getting a bunch of meat that ends up in the bottom of this cookhouse, and the product is not sellable. So we would have, back then it was all the money that we had going into a 10,000 pound run of product. And we would get a phone call from the manufacturer when he gets to the plant the next day saying the product fatted out. Sorry, guys. And there was no liability on his part whatsoever. We just had to eat the whole thing and start from scratch. And so those periods of time were pretty devastating.
How did you actually survive that?
It was just kind of starting from scratch again, because we were always trying to reinvest just to get to the next level. So we would put all the money into the next run and all the money and so I honestly, I don't even know exactly how we got through each instance, but we always would have a certain amount of inventory left over while we were doing the next production run, trying to gear up for future. So we would have to do is sell all the existing inventory to recoup all of the lost investment. So it was a lot of just kind of plateauing and, this zigzagging back and forth and in terms of getting to a point where we have some cash in the bank. But, again, I'm glad it happened then and not a little further down the road, because that would have been really, really costly. I don't know how you bounce back from a, 100,000 plus pound production run. That's, $500,000 or something like that. So that would be a lot of money to lose. So, and, it was obviously really frustrating. And I think Rashid and I were kind of losing a little bit of confidence at that stage. But then the way we always are, it's like, okay, like, I don't even know if we get past this, but we're going to try. So like, we would just put our heads together and just lean in. And luckily we were able to figure it out. We hired a lot of external consultants that taught us so much about making the product too. Which I think that's one of the things that he and I are never afraid to do, which I advise anybody to have the same mindset, is like, there's always something to learn, and there's always somebody out there that's done it, and they have the scar tissue to show for it. Learn from that person. It's a lot less costly, even if you have to pay them some money for consulting fees or whatever it is. The quicker you can learn how to overcome these problems, that's going to serve you in the long run. So we've always kind of had that same mindset. The more recent, really scary situation was COVID, which was scary for everybody. And it's kind of interesting because you get people now being like, oh, COVID probably completely saved your business or built your business. And I'm like, you don't know the details there. Actually, it's not the case. In the beginning, when COVID was first really kind of announced and there was this, the initial like lockdowns, e-com went through the roof. Even actually retail went through the roof, all of our wholesale customers. One of our biggest customers at the time was Trader Joe's, and they went from, basically tripling orders that they would normally give us. And so we produce against that. And it was a lot of money. It was millions and millions of dollars in inventory that we had to produce. And then shortly after, they made the decision to limit foot traffic inside their stores. So they went from doors wide open to fit however many people in the store to limiting it to 10 people in the store at a time. Their snack business and our snack business was down overnight over 90%. I think what the feedback I heard was somewhere around like 90% of their snack sales was down, initially during that period of time. We were actually even worse because we were positioned at the front end in a lot of their stores, but they put up plexiglass at the registers. So it was almost like a CHOMPS museum where they would put you could see the CHOMPS, you couldn't even get them if you wanted them. Sales just disappeared. And then what happened was they had to cancel all of those open POs that they had with us. And so it's millions and millions of, dollars of inventory that we have no home for. And it's not like we did not have the distribution then that we have today. That was super, super scary. And so, the thing that Rashid and I, we were like, listen, like, we have an amazing team. That's the last thing we're going to do is start cutting people. Like, there was a lot of furloughs happening, layoffs, and we just didn't do any of that. We used that time. There was some trading out, if that makes sense, like where we used that time to, let's just say there were people that maybe weren't fitting the culture and they weren't the best fit for the team. And we knew that we could get, so we traded up at that point. So I think it was like 3 people that we ended up cutting. We hired 3 people, all immediately after. So, but, Rashid and I were kind of looking at each other like, I don't know if this keeps going on, we're not going to be able to survive this. We didn't have a financial partner at the time that would lean in with us. He and I definitely, at the time, by the way, before we did our private equity deal, Rashid and I had all on the line. Like, this was like our houses were on the line. We were personally guaranteed for every loan. Like, if this all went south, he and I would both be homeless and I'd be back into the bankruptcy state that I was, when I was 27. And so would he. So, anyway, that being said, that was a terrible time for us. Obviously, things ended up bouncing back, luckily, and wholesale kind of opened back up, and it happened all just in time. It's kind of forced us, actually, so we started building new relationships during that time while we're sitting on all this inventory, so we were able to find a new home for that inventory. And obviously, then when things open back up, now everything's back on, and then you're kind of on this new trajectory with new customers we didn't have before. That influenced a lot of our decision-making in terms of how we spend money, and risk that we're willing to take. And then on top of it, it really led to us running the process to bring in the right partner to de-risk our families, because we realized that when that happened, we had kids, and that's, he and I going bankrupt is one thing, but our families going bankrupt that's terrible.
You mentioned don't be afraid to ask for advice. There's so much advice. There are these industry veterans, there's these playbooks, quote unquote. there's a way to do it. You go into Whole Foods, then you expand in natural, then you go conventional, then you go big box, then you go club. And it's like, it's bullshit. I know it's bullshit because we did none of it and we've succeeded. And I know you guys have taken it. You have talked about throwing out the playbook too. I'm just curious, like, where do you draw the line? How do you decide who is a good giver of advice, who is not, who to trust, who not to trust?
I think times are always changing. Companies are changing. Those decisions that you can make, those external factors are always changing. To say you have a playbook is ridiculous. And what happened and worked once does not mean it's going to happen again. Making decisions based on now, not on some strategy or some playbook or anything like that. I mean, Liz, our president and COO, she's exactly like, they're all the exact same way. What's in front of us right now? How are we going to tackle this decision, this problem, whatever it is that we're facing? How do we accomplish this now? Has nothing to do with, I mean, like, you would think that when you partner with a Stride, you end up getting like this whole Rolodex of people that were like the saviors of their businesses or whatever. And it's just not how it works. Like, if there's people that they know that could be a potential add value at that point, they make an introduction, but it's definitely not where it's like, hold this person's hand, they're going to walk you to the finish line. Like, it's just not how it works, There's a lot of just like thought and deep thought that goes into all the decisions that we make. And we do that together, and it's all, again, based on what we're facing today.
What keeps you going? What is the end goal? What's like the new mountaintop for you?
Listen, all this work that we put into building CHOMPS, I want to make sure that this survives me. Like, it's got, like, when me and Rashid are gone, this thing you better be going, because we invested a lot of time, heartache, and, blood, sweat, and tears, and we made a lot of sacrifices to get here. And in my point of view, I don't think, getting to an exit is like, that's definitely not the end goal. That's like I think that's a part of the process, because at some point, like, there's bigger partners that have the infrastructure that is required to really build CHOMPS to what it could really be. I'll give you a perfect example, like a DSD network. We don't have that. So, like, we don't have the boots on the ground in stores, making sure that, I mentioned out of stocks before. It's a serious issue. Merchandising, out of stocks, getting like off shelf placements. There's so much more that we could potentially do in terms of execution. It's just extremely expensive because we don't have that infrastructure. There's other guys that do. Right? There's other bigger partners that do. And so for CHOMPS to get to be this household brand that we're trying to build, eventually it makes sense. You've got to there's only so many doors that you can get to. And at that point, it's like, okay, now how are you executing within those doors to make sure your product is prominently placed and turning as many units as you possibly can to obviously sell as much to that door? So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of one of the ways I think about it. Obviously, we brought in a private equity partner, so they need to get out of the investment at some point. So luckily, that's very patient capital. These guys are awesome. Like, they're just kind of like, they give us advice, which is probably counterintuitive. So, like, when things are going crazy, and we're realizing that, we could do a certain number of volume or whatever, or revenue, they're just like, why so much? Why do you need all that? Like, why don't you just pump the brakes and just, do you really need that now? So they're asking me opposite questions that you would expect an investor to ask. But again, it's because they've been there and done it, though. It's like, they know what happens. You start getting too excited about things, the wheels fall off. That's when you put too much pressure on the infrastructure of the business, on the operations side of things, on your team. Like, we have a very small team. Like, we have, I think, 80 people now on the team, or somewhere around there. And we started last year with 35. Now we've got 80. But that's if you were to use that rule of thumb where you've got one FTE for every $1 million in revenue, we've got about 20% of the people that we should have on the team.
There's another kind of trope of you want to work on the business, not in the business. And I always thought that was kind of bullshit too. Like, I still very much, we're like you, but way smaller. But, we're 6 office employees trying to do 50 million in revenue. It's insanely tough. And you have to work in the business. There is no other way. Like, and not only work in the business, you have to wear multiple hats. And so, like, you have to, in certain ways, become corporate, which I know you hate in many respects. I hate, but like, you have to. You're at a certain scale where that's just coming. So how do you like square that circle? How do you balance keeping like the startup-y mindset, working in the business still, but then also the other side of it?
Instead of just focusing on, putting fires out today, we want to have the team that can focus on those things so we can be strategic. And then year after year, like something would happen and we would just continue growing too quickly and then nothing changed, right? So we eventually realized like we've got to just like nip this in the bud and get ahead of it. So that's when we hired Liz to come in, and she's a bulldog. I mean, she's amazing. She could do like the work of 5 people. So that, which is great. So it allows Rashid and I to kind of take a step back and then actually think strategically. And it's just like, it is a little bit of a game changer. But we do both find ourselves, just because of the way that we're wired, just getting sucked into the day to day. Because we love it. I mean, we love this stuff. And, but yeah, I think at some point to your point, being more corporate and being able to focus on like big picture things.
Are you having less fun, or is it just different?
It's just different. It's tough to explain. Like some days I get fired up about the big picture strategic stuff. And then other days I'm just kind of like, I'm not. I don't know. It's just weird. Like when it comes to like legal stuff, like, oh my God, like whatever, like, real corporate stuff, audits and all that crap. I mean, no, dude, like, I'm sorry, someone else got to deal with these stuff. But no, I love talking about HR roadmap. What is the organization going to look like down the road? Who are the people that we need? I like thinking about sales strategy. I like thinking about, channel strategy, what's next, timing, all those things. Partnerships, that gets me really, riled up. I love thinking about who can we potentially partner with that can help build the business to the next level, hit a new core customer, or cohort, whatever you want to call it. And so that's, content strategy. I love that. So that's, these are all kind of like bigger picture things that I've been involved with, but I think it's a different mindset now where you've kind of like connecting dots further out.
I remember when we hit some critical mass in size and the team like just no longer wanted or needed my help on packaging or on particular email marketing assets or anything like that. But then suddenly we had a lot of HR stuff, legal stuff, right? Things I didn't like. ERP decisions coming to my plate. That was no fun. So I had like both feelings that I didn't like the big size of the team, but then I also started to love it. Which way do you lean? Do you prefer the early days with a 10-person team? Do you love an 80-person team? Is it a mix?
It's a mix, and it's like day by day, like things, it's like, it kind of changes for me. When you start dealing with like personalities and conflict and that type of thing, because you have so many people on the team, like that's where like, I'm kind of like, damn, the early days were so like, so easy and like, it's just like simple, but no. I also like, again, to your point, like having some involvement in those kind of decisions is always really fun. But man, I can tell you what, our team, no matter what kind of idea I could bring to the table, our team is so much better than us now. And I realize that like we're very blessed to have the team that we've got. And they bring countless ideas to us all the time. So brainstorming sessions are always fun to do and kind of get in the weeds every so often with them, but they clearly don't need us nowadays as much as they used to.
Cool. Well, you want to get into, we have a section that we do at the end of these, which is sort of a rapid fire, quick questions, 30-second, 1-minute response. You up for that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. The first one, I love Peter Thiel quotes, and he has one that is my favorite, which is, what important truths do very few people agree with you on?
Well, I'll think about my answer. You give me your answer first.
I would say that all problems are people problems. Like, I think most people focus on a lot of stuff other than people problems. And I think at its core, a business is just, especially in the early days, it like really is just the people. And so it's going to succeed or fail based on how good the people are. And so I think you should obsess more on people really early on. And an offshoot of that is nepotism gets a bad name. And I'm actually pro nepotism. I think if you trust someone, like I hired my wife, for example, it was the best decision I ever made. Was it sort of nepotistic? Yeah. Is she the best person running in that role that there ever could be? Also, yeah. And so other people would be like, don't do that. That's going to muddying the waters. I'm like, no. Like, if I can trust that person 10 times more than some rando that applied through Indeed, I value that so much more than anything else. And again, like, how do you keep a 6-person team that can do 50 million? You have to have just absolute animals on that ship. And I don't think people focus on that nearly enough.
When we're hiring, like, I do not care about, where you went to school. I don't care where you worked or any of this stuff. Like, it's great to ask questions about what the experience is, but it's more, for me, it's like the most important thing is going to be, we call them traits of a champion. And that's what I'm thinking about the entire time when I'm in an interview speaking to somebody. How is this person wired? How do they think about, approaching problems? How do they think about, do they get like frazzled? How, like, ego, from an ego standpoint, that is like one of the major things. If you ask somebody, what's your biggest failure, and they have trouble coming up with an answer, that don't work for me, man. Like, everyone knows, like, for me, I know the big things I screwed up, and I don't let that, I never forget those things, because that's just the way I hold myself accountable. And I feel like those are the best people to have in the team, the people that are most self-disciplined. And there's other things that those people usually do. It's like these people are the ones that are like hiking very tall mountains, or they always have like some crazy goal that they're always going after outside of work. And so I like to kind of just find those traits in people, because those are always the best people to work with.
Everyone's gone through the painful experience of hiring someone who was like the experienced hire. It was the quote unquote adult in the room. And you were like, oh, they must know more than me because they did this at XYZ other brand that got to an exit or IPO or whatever. And then like within 2-3 months, you're like, holy shit. Not only is the experience not helpful, it's harmful. They have an ego tied to the experience. So you telling them, no, actually we do it this way, is like creates cognitive dissonance in their mind, which then creates strife between you and them. And so it's just like, I'd rather all 6 of our people have 0 CPG experience. Not a single person has experience. And it's like the best thing ever because no one has any ego around it.
Yeah. And see you guys doing just fine. So it's like, yeah, that to me is more important. Again, like resume, that's, I only go so far. I mean, I obviously look at them because I want to like see what they've done, but I think the way that they answer questions and carry themselves, that to me is so much more important.
I like to find people who have had the experience of being on a high functioning team before and can articulate that experience, because I find those people demand and want that experience and expect that and just know how to slip into a high functioning team and snap in there really well.
All right, what's a commonly cited platitude about what it takes for a startup to win that's just plain wrong?
Taking on outside capital. I mean, this is like, again, people, I get so mad, man, seeing people and they celebrate like a raise, like as if it's like a massive win. Like, to me, I'm like, I'd be kind of embarrassed. You should be like, I raised this money to get to do something that we couldn't do before, not because my company's not profitable.
At its core, you're asking for help. You're saying, I can't do this. I need you to survive, which is most people would be embarrassed about. And yet it's the inverse.
That's what I'm saying. The best time to raise money is when you don't need it, right? It's the best time to do an exit is when you just don't need to sell, right? And so that's what we did. It's like, I feel like I still didn't even celebrate that. It was more the celebration that we were doing a good enough job that amazingly smart people that have been in this industry for so much longer than us are excited enough about our brand to cut a check and take a big bet on us and want to actually partner with us and work with us every day. That to me was the win.
I got one rapid fire one for you. What's something about you that people dislike?
My directness. Sometimes I don't filter things I say enough. I maybe sometimes lose some of the empathy. And I've been in this role, it's kind of forced me to start thinking about how I'm communicating with other people. We actually hired a leadership coach. It forces me to think before I speak, and especially when I'm speaking to the team. And I think sometimes for me, it's like, I'm not going to hesitate in giving my feedback, because I don't think that's the smart thing to do. Like, we need to get jobs done, and if there's something needs to be done, I need to let them know. But I will, like, maybe I'll approach it in a different way rather than just blurting out what my thought is or things that they need to work on. I'll caveat it with, like, listen, you guys are crushing it with this, this, and this. We have a highly capable team. We have, whatever it is that we have to say, like, we're killing it. Like, these are all the truths, and then remind them, like, you're doing an amazing job. There's always, doesn't matter what level we get to, there's always going to be something for it to work on. And it's my job and my role to find those things. And so I'm supposed to be coaching you. No matter how good we get and how good you are, there's always something to work on.
All right. Biggest mistake and biggest regret in your startup journey?
Yeah. I think the biggest mistake in my previous startup was, which I fixed this time around, was waiting to get everything perfect before bringing it to market. And that was just the ultimate downfall. And it led to a series of bad decisions, which ultimately led to our failure.
That's like the innovator's dilemma, right? As you get more corporate, you have a lot to lose. And so rolling out something that's half-baked has much bigger stakes. And so you just don't do it. You've been in the dumps and you've been at the highest of the highs where you're currently at. But just how did you define success pre-startup or pre-CHOMPS in particular? And how do you define it today? And how has that evolved?
So I think early on, it was probably more of a financial focus, which it is for most people, right? You just kind of want that financial freedom. You don't want to have to, growing up a lot of people grew up like this, where, I'm not the only one, where you kind of always have it in your mind that, like, just money worries, and watching my parents stress out about that. But I wanted to get to a point where, not that I had so much money that, like, I just want to get to a point where I don't even think about it. In the stage where I'm at right now, I'm realizing, like, there's a lot of things in my life. I've got 3 kids. My kids had to sacrifice a lot. They didn't make the decision to. They sacrificed it, though. They didn't see me for a long time. COVID actually was a blessing for me. I got to teach my kid how to ride a bike. I taught my daughter how to walk. For me, like, now, success, it was like, I still think that not having to worry about money is a great thing. It also allows you to focus your time on things that are more positive, like spending time with my family. What can I do next to, like, with them? What experiences can we have just to have a great life? So that's, yeah. But it's funny though. My parents are strangely, probably the ones that I look at where, like, they're very, like, successful. They're just happy people. They're great grandparents now. They're 63 years old. They've got, they're relatively young, so they probably have a lot of years left, hopefully, knock on wood.
So stress reduction via financial freedom, family, and just, like, general contentedness.
Yeah.
Boom. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for the time, man.
Yeah, for sure. All right, have a good one, guys.
All right, that's a wrap. Thanks for listening, and thank you to our sponsors, IQ Bar. Go to Amazon.com, search for IQ Bar, buy one, wait for it to arrive, leave a review. Please leave a review. Reviews are massive. Our second sponsor is Ramp. Go to ramp.com/glass. They give you $250 for free when you sign up. It's the best credit card / spend management software there is. Use it for years. Love it. Our third sponsor is Gorgias, GORGIAS.com. It's the best help desk software there is. We use it too. Also love it. Request a demo and mention Eating Glass. They will give you preferential treatment. They'll treat you well. If you like the podcast in general, subscribe, review it, tell a couple friends, tell your mom, and tune in a couple weeks. Talk to you then.